The story begins with a man named Brian who is running frantically down the street, trying to escape from someone. The sound of incessant gunfire from behind intensifies Brian's fear. To save his life, he quickly scales a wall and jumps to the other side. Just then, two cars arrive. They belong to two rival gangs, sworn enemies, and a massive shootout immediately begins between them. During the chaos, one driver is shot, causing his car to crash nearby. Meanwhile, Brian was still running for his life. He reaches a pile of trash and picks up an iron rod for safety. As a gang's car approaches, Brian immediately attacks the car's windshield with the rod. The driver loses his balance but manages to regain control and starts chasing Brian again. To stop Brian, the gang members are shooting continuously, but Brian is not hit by a single bullet. However, as Brian jumps onto the car, a gang member suddenly shoots him in the stomach. Brian falls to the ground. A bald gangster, Playa, approaches and shoots him in the neck. Brian's condition was critical, close to death. Seeing this, Playa leaves Brian to suffer and drives away. Luckily, someone takes Brian to a hospital. His wife, Saya, soon arrives, extremely distressed by Brian's poor condition. Inside, the surgeon successfully removes the bullet. Brian's life is saved, which brings great relief to Saya. Just then, Detective Dennis arrives. He goes straight into the room to meet Brian, but seeing him unconscious, he simply leaves his visiting card on the table and leaves. A little later, when Brian wakes up, Saya is beside him. Seeing her gives Brian some peace. Since Brian's condition was still serious, he couldn't be taken home. The hospital begins therapy to aid his recovery. Amidst all this, Brian suddenly notices that he cannot speak. He panics and tries to scream. But due to the deep wound in his neck, his vocal cords were completely damaged, and he was permanently mute. Brian is utterly devastated. But his wife, Saya, consoles him and tells him about a synthetic vocal tool that might help him speak again. Brian initially rejects the gift, wanting his real voice back. Since that was impossible, he eventually decides to use the tool. A few days later, Brian recovers significantly and returns home with Saya. Before entering, Brian is overwhelmed with the memory of his son Tyler. Tyler was always the first to greet him, but he had died some time ago, and remembering him makes Brian emotional. Saya manages to comfort him. However, she could not remove the pain and the memories of his son from Brian's heart. Upon entering the house, Brian sees the Christmas tree and gifts they decorated with Tyler, which triggers more memories, and he bursts into tears. Saya holds him close, weeping loudly as well. In a fit of rage, Brian starts throwing household items. His eyes fall on a newspaper reporting the shooting incident that occurred shortly after Tyler was shot and killed. Remembering that moment, Brian angrily tears up the paper and sits down to drink. Saya is troubled by this behavior. She leaves Brian to his devices and goes to sleep. The next day, she goes to the office to distract herself. But Brian is still consumed by grief and continues to drink. Saya leaves for the office without trying to reason with him. Afterward, Brian feels even worse. He goes into Tyler's room, becomes emotional, and looks at his belongings. He deeply regrets losing his voice because he cannot properly share his sorrow. To calm himself, he goes to the garden and starts remembering the moment Tyler died. On that day, Brian was playing with Tyler in the garden, and Saya was filming them. Suddenly, two rival gangs fighting each other arrived near their house. Seeing the shootout, Brian tried to save Tyler, but Tyler was shot before he could, and he died. Brian then chased after those gangs to take revenge, but he was also shot and had to be admitted to the hospital. Now, in the present, remembering all this brings tears to Brian's eyes. He resolves that even if it costs him his life, he will avenge Tyler's death. With this resolve, he immediately removes all the liquor bottles. In the evening, when Saya returns home, she doesn't find Brian. She quickly messages him. She finds Brian in one of the rooms, ignoring her messages and looking at Detective Dennis's card. He then goes to the office to meet Dennis. Since Dennis was not there, Brian waited in his room. Looking at the wall, he sees pictures of big gangsters, including Playa. Brian uses his phone's camera to take pictures of Playa and many other thugs. He leaves before Dennis arrives. Leaving the office, Brian goes home and circles the 24th on the calendar. That's the day he plans to kill Playa and all the gangsters. To prepare, he starts practicing fighting and combat. He also learns to use a knife to inflict the worst possible death on his enemies. He becomes so engrossed in training that he stops paying attention to Saya. This worries Saya because both Tyler and Brian were now distant, and the responsibility of the household expenses fell entirely on her. But Brian was solely focused on eliminating his son's enemies. He works day and night on his fighting skills, and his rigorous training continues for many days. During this, Brian also bought a second-hand car, which he modifies in the garage so he can use it to attack his enemies. Next, Brian starts learning to shoot under the supervision of a marksman. Initially, his aim was poor, but his hard work soon pays off. He buys some dangerous weapons for himself. After this, he starts listening to the radio to gather information on the gangsters. He meticulously starts extracting details about Playa's associates and tries to learn everyone's daily routine. But realizing he had neglected Saya, he goes to meet her at night. Seeing Brian makes Saya incredibly happy. But after spending some time together, Saya decides that she will not stay with Brian. Because he was giving her absolutely no time, she felt staying with him or not was the same thing. Saya leaves the house and Brian, going to her mother's house. Angered by this, Brian takes out his frustration on a dummy. He quickly controls his anger and gets back to preparing for the destruction of his enemies. After a long time of hard work, Brian was now completely ready to face his enemies. His driving skills were also excellent. One night, Brian takes his camera and goes to Playa's hideout to take his picture. Playa was busy with a girl. After taking her photo, Brian also takes a picture of Playa's car's number plate. He then returns home and focuses on gathering more information. Brian could now perform every task easily, whether it was gathering information, driving, fighting, or shooting. Due to his daily practice, he had become highly skilled. The next day, Brian goes to the market, sees a child, and becomes emotional again thinking about Tyler. He immediately goes and hugs the child. But the child's mother comes and takes him away. As Brian comes out of the shop, he receives messages from Saya, which he ignores. Suddenly, his eyes fall on Playa, who is distributing money among children. Seeing this, Brian angrily pulls out his knife and starts moving towards him. But attacking Playa could endanger the many children around him, so Brian stops. Suddenly, one of Playa's associates pushes him, knocking him to the ground, and a girl with him throws ice cream on him to make fun of him before leaving. Brian suppresses his anger because he knows what he has to do now. At night, he starts the game of death. With full preparation, he goes to the house of one of Playa's gangster associates and attacks him head-on, knocking him unconscious. When the gangster wakes up, he is hanging in Brian's garage, and Brian is standing in front of him. Brian first tortures him relentlessly, then seats him on a chair, shows him some documents, and starts asking about his associates. But the gangster refuses to say anything. When he gets a chance, he attacks Brian, picks up a nearby knife, and stabs Brian in the leg. Enraged, Brian picks up a nearby screwdriver and hits him repeatedly. A very dangerous fight ensues. Although Brian faces some difficulty, he eventually manages to bring him under his control. After some time, the 24th arrives. This meant that Brian had to eliminate Playa and his enemies today. He gets dressed, keeps all his weapons close, and before leaving for his mission, he writes a letter for Saya. He goes to Tyler's room to look at everything because he doesn't know if he will ever return home alive. He picks up one of Tyler's toys and goes to see Saya one last time, who is standing on the balcony, painting Tyler's picture. After gazing at Saya, Brian goes straight to Tyler's grave, wishes him a happy birthday, and promises that he will punish his killers at any cost. He places the toy on Tyler's grave, becomes emotional, and leaves. Soon after, someone knocks on Dennis's gate. When Dennis goes outside, he finds the same gangster, whom Brian had beaten severely, lying half dead in front of him. Dennis calls the police and has him arrested. He notices a letter lying near the gangster, in which Brian had written that he was going to end everything now. Along with the letter, Dennis also finds a hard drive. Checking the hard drive, Dennis finds information on Playa and many of his associates, along with a lot of evidence against them. With this evidence, they could easily be put behind bars. Meanwhile, Brian sees two gangsters on the road forcibly snatching money from a couple. Brian immediately goes to teach them a lesson. He quickly kills one thug with a knife. But his associate climbs onto the roof of Brian's car. Brian tries hard to shake him off, but the gangster doesn't get down and tries to shoot Brian. But Brian, now a seasoned fighter, kills the gangster with his own gun. He then stops the car, vomits, and drives away. As he leaves, he throws a packet into a large area, which was actually Playa's territory. When Playa's men find the packet, they take it to Playa. Opening it, Playa sees two severed fingers, belonging to the two thugs Brian had killed. Playa becomes enraged. Elsewhere in the city, two gangs start fighting again. A massive shootout occurs once more. A female police officer is shot in the leg while running away. Brian also happens to arrive there after hearing the gunfire. He immediately starts driving and shooting at both gangs because they were also associates of Playa. While driving and shooting, he kills several thugs one by one. He was unaware that a thug was showing his action to Playa via a video call. Brian continues shooting and quickly asks the police officer to get into the car. But as she tries to enter, a thug shoots and kills her. Brian is saddened, but he pushes the officer's body out of the car and drives on, killing many people. He soon reaches the thug who was showing the whole scene to Playa on a video call. Brian shows no mercy, severely beats him, makes a video of him, and sends it to Playa. Seeing all this, Playa remembers everything about Brian. So, he immediately orders his men to kill Brian. Meanwhile, some thugs were causing chaos in the city, and Brian goes to check on them. But he drives past them without doing anything because none of them were the people responsible for Tyler's death. Brian was feeling bad for killing so many people, but he convinces himself that he is not doing anything wrong, he is just avenging his son's death. Just then he spots some gangsters behind him. Brian immediately speeds away. The gangsters chase him and start firing. Although Brian initially tries to escape, he suddenly takes a turn and starts shooting back fiercely, killing one of the thugs. But the remaining thugs are still following him. A biker with a gun starts shooting indiscriminately at him. Brian bravely keeps moving forward. Just then, two cars surround him from the front and back. Brian shoots and kills the driver of the front car. As the back car approaches, Brian maneuvers the car, causing it to collide with the front car, and he drives away. But the biker thug continues to chase him. As the biker approaches the car and starts firing, Brian immediately grabs his hand and slams him against the car. The bike loses balance and falls under the car. Brian drags him forward, leaving the man half dead there. On the other side, Dennis has set out to reach Playa's hideout. By now, Playa had received news that Brian had severely beaten and killed many of his men. He quickly messages his group, asking the remaining people to come to his headquarters. Brian also sees this message on one of Playa's men's phones. Brian himself was sitting right in front of Playa's headquarters. He gathers courage by looking at Tyler's toy and, with his weapons, picks up a nearby bike. He enters Playa's headquarters on the bike. The thugs start shooting, and since they are numerous, Brian blasts his bike to create a diversion. This kills many of the thugs present there. Brian quickly takes the opportunity to go upstairs, where Playa is dancing with his girlfriend. While climbing up, many of Playa's men try to stop Brian. But Brian kills everyone one by one, clearing his path. Just then, more men arrive and shoot Brian 3 times. He survives because of his bulletproof jacket. However, another round of shots wounds him, and he falls down. But he bravely gets up again and starts going upstairs. Before reaching Playa, he sets a trap. Just then, a man named Lewis, who was skilled in shooting, arrives and attacks Playa. Brian hits Lewis severely. Despite being badly beaten, Lewis does not stop chasing Brian. Many thugs were trapped in Brian's trap and are killed in the explosion. The explosion distracts Lewis, and Brian launches a fierce attack on him. Lewis courageously gets up again. Just then, Dennis comes down to help Brian. He slowly moves forward with a gun. Brian, meanwhile, manages to shoot and kill Lewis. Dennis is also busy eliminating the thugs below. After that, he comes to Brian, and both point their guns at each other. Dennis lowers his gun, signaling to Brian that he is on his side. Just then, Playa's girlfriend arrives with a machine gun. She starts firing indiscriminately, shooting both Brian and Dennis. As she starts reloading the gun, Brian sees a chance. He throws her gun away and tells her to stay away. But she ignores him and shoots Brian twice in the leg. Brian falls to the ground. She was about to shoot Dennis too. But Brian seizes the opportunity and shoots and kills her. Brian then reaches Playa. Playa starts shooting at him continuously. All the bullets hit Brian's bulletproof jacket, but some bullets wound him, causing him to fall to the ground in a semi-conscious state. Playa was about to finish him off. But then Dennis shoots Playa in the shoulder. Brian gathers his strength and attacks Playa, choking him to death. As he does this, he sees visions of Tyler from his birth until his death, and he feels happy imagining Tyler's future. He then takes his last breath, embracing death like an old friend. A few days later, Saya goes to Brian's grave and remembers how he risked his life to kill Tyler's enemies. She also finds the letter written by him and reads it, recalling his memory. With this, the story ends here.